Hi everybody, we hope you are safe and well wherever you are. My name is Emily and this is Jillian and we are from the Whale Interpretive Centre. Very clearly we are not at the Whale Interpretive Centre. Right now we are in Nanaimo, British Columbia, about 4 hours south of Telegraph Cove. The Telegraph Cove and the Whale Interpretive Centre and the painting behind us, and that's as close as we're getting right now because we are at home from COVID-19. It should be noted, we are not breaking social distancing rules. Jillian and I are not only co-workers, we're also sisters. So we live here, I'm home from university, and so we are here and we're staying here, not going to school until things blow over. And with Telegraph Cove, as you know, if you're watching this, the Whale Interpretive Centre and Telegraph Cove are both closed due to the COVID situation, so we are here. So today we want to intro to you our new series that we're going to be doing for the duration of our self-isolation away from Telegraph Cove here in Nanaimo. Yeah, so the new series we're starting is what we're calling Beachcombers, and what that's going to entail is looking at different species that you don't need a boat to see. Pretty much anything that you can see from the beach. This might be marine mammals, this might be intertidal species. Today we're going to be covering some easy to spot species, different shells, and also talking about some beach etiquette. The other thing that we're including is one of the core competencies from the BC curriculum in every week's lesson. These will be released every Friday. The one that we're including this week is social awareness and responsibility, and so that will be relating to taking care of the environment as well as just being conscious of the people around you. So the idea for these videos is to act as a supplement for kids who are at home, largely based at kids probably in most elementary school grades, and so the hope is that while you are stuck at home, maybe you're going to the beach more, because if you live in a coastal place and you're lucky enough to have beaches near you, this is something you can do while respecting social distancing, assuming you are staying apart from everybody else on the beach. And so we thought that perhaps, given there's probably going to be an influx of the younger audience heading to the beach, maybe with parents who are home from work, we thought that this was a really good option. Jillian and I are really lucky to live near the ocean, and so we have seen a huge influx of people at the beaches around our family's home here, and so we know that more people are frequenting the beach, so that's why we thought this video was a good plan. So we have 3 different sections of beach etiquette that we want to cover today. Just really briefly, we have don't bother the neighbors and what that's going to include, and the beach is not a garbage can. What comes from the beach stays at the beach. Pretty basic stuff. Yeah. Yeah, so the first one, don't bother the neighbors, exactly what it sounds like. If this animal lives on the beach, it needs to be there. You're a visitor to the beach. These species are going to stay at the beach all the time. And so just imagine someone coming into your house and just being like, I make all the rules now, I'm going to do whatever I want. You would not appreciate that. So if you see an animal that lives on the beach, whether it's something from a little tiny crab to a larger animal like maybe a seal or a bald eagle, you're going to want to give these animals a space and respectful distance. Some smaller creatures maybe you're going to have a look at in a tide pool, but you want to be really, really gentle, and you really don't want to be bothering these animals because, you know, things like a tidal animal, a blue heron for example, a blue heron might be feeding in a feeding pool, in a tide pool where it's eating, and if you chase it away, then it's got to wait until the next tide to access those tide pools. So really be considerate of who's around and who lives there all the time, and you don't want to be coming in and bothering these animals. A big one on this is please keep your dog on a leash. This is so important. Unless it's an area that actually has a sign that says off-leash area, you should assume that your dog needs to stay on a leash. And some of us have indoor pets like we do. This is Paul. And Paul stays inside, so he's not bothering anybody, but if you take a dog and it's chasing birds away, these birds then may not get another opportunity to feed till the next low tide, and that's really detrimental to them. So make sure your dog is on a leash unless there is actually a sign that says off leash. Please do not assume. Most places are not off leash, and especially in this time of COVID, imagine someone who has COVID-19, has a dog at home, that dog is exposed, and then that dog runs up to you and you pet it because it's off leash and running around. That could make you sick. So it's actually doubly important right now. It's super, super important. Yeah. Another thing I just want to add there, if you are looking at tidal pools and looking at all the creatures in there, if you want to touch them, I mean, for some of them like the crabs, it's recommended you don't, because they will pinch you. But if you want to, just use one finger, use the back of your finger, and just stroke them really, really gently. Just be really careful and considerate with all the species that are out there. Again, imagine it's someone coming up to you, and if I'm like, hey, you're not gonna like that. You want just a nice little pet. So please try and be respectful of anything you come across. Yeah, alright, our next heading is the beach is not a garbage can. Super simple. This one is exactly what it sounds like. If you bring a picnic with you, take all the picnic and the remains home with you. Pick up after your pets. Yeah, just don't leave stuff
This
behind.
one's super easy.
Another thing though, a lot of people think, oh, this is an apple core, it's biodegradable. That's not really the case for a couple of reasons. First of all, if you chuck an apple core, the animals that might feed on that, an apple core, at least in this part of the world, is not a natural part of their diet, so that's bad. The other thing too is that if the apple seeds are planted somewhere, apple trees are not a native species to the coast area, and of course they've been introduced by people, but we don't want to be doing that. And so even if you think, oh, this is biodegradable, just take it home.
Just take it home.
You can
be
take
on
it
the
home.
safe side.
Take it home to your own compost. That's fantastic. You're right. It does biodegrade, but it's not something that goes in the beach.
Yeah. Yeah. So then our final section of beach etiquette is just what comes from the beach stays at the beach. Again, super simple. Exactly how it sounds. Don't take animals home with you. Don't take crabs home with you. I know that was my thing as a kid, but don't take them home with you.
No, they'll die if you take them home.
They will. They need to stay at the beach.
This is also important for shells, and this is a really kind of uncommon thing to hear. Most people take seashells home from the beach with them, and the seashells that we have here to show you today we're going to take back, and this is really important for a couple of reasons. The shells on the beach provide a home for a lot of different species. Things like hermit crabs reuse other shells, and which is, fantastic. Hi, Paul. But you need to think about, okay, if I take this home with me, it's beautiful in my room, but it does take away from the environment. The other thing is that as the shells break down, they release calcium carbonate back into the environment, which is a chemical that's really important to a lot of ocean life. And so by removing that, even if something like an oyster shell they're probably not going to use, Paul's checking out the oyster shell as we speak, in fact, that this does take away from the ocean environment as well.
The other thing is that oftentimes shells that are no longer alive, that are just on the beach, they will become hosts to barnacles or other little sea slugs or other organisms, and so you want to make sure that the seashells are not a host to something, because it's a really important part of the environment is when they're providing a home to something else, so they need to stay there. Did he steal a shell?
He stole a limpet.
Oops.
So without further ado, as Paul is clearly getting impatient to check out these shells, we have a few species, 4 species here that you're commonly going to see.
Do you want to hand them over to
Yeah,
me?
here you go. And so we wanted to share some of these with you, that these are things that you can easily see. And so maybe if you watch this video and you head to the beach in the next few days with your family, you're going to see some of these and go, hey, I actually know what that is, which is super cool. So for starters here, we have a blue mussel, and that's this guy. And you're going to recognize him because he's kind of a teardrop shape, which is different than some others. This guy has some mussels growing on him, as you can. This guy has some barnacles growing on him, as you can see. The inside is going to be a little silvery, kind of iridescent, and the outside is usually purple. It can have a darker kind of lip around the outside. And these guys will often, they're obviously naturally they're going to have 2 sides to the shell, and they're going to be attached to a rock, and sometimes they can be in big colonies. You'll also see these on piers, on big posts that are going into the water that a dock is anchored to.
Yeah. Next we have our Pacific oyster. This one is really easy to recognize. It is big, white, it's got kind of a tiered
It looks like a Ruffles
ending.
chip.
Yeah. These guys are all over the place. They'll often be in large colonies along the seashore. They're all over the place. They almost always have barnacles growing on them, or they've grown onto a rock while they were still alive. So these guys are really neat to look at because they come in a whole bunch of different sizes and different formations. They'll be grown together, they'll be on their own. So lots of things to look out for with these guys.
The other thing to notice on these ones is they often have a purple mark on the inside, so you can check for that as well. Our next thing here is our dark mahogany clam. The ringing of the bell is Paul. The dark mahogany clam is our next species. These are really common, and keep in mind too, we're sharing the species that are most common around central and northern Vancouver Island. You may have different species at home. Most of these species have quite a large range, so you're likely to see all of these species from Alaska to at least Oregon, if not further south. So there's a pretty big range, but you'll have other things on your beaches especially if you live something like on the Atlantic coast, or maybe you're watching this from the UK, which is super cool. We've had guests from all over the world, so depending where you are, you might see different species. These ones are really common, and again, we have this beautiful purple color. These are a bivalve, which means you have a two parts, so when the animal's alive, these close. If I close it now, it will break, so I'm not going to do that. The outside here has that dark mahogany color that they're named for, and then a white back. And so yeah, when these animals are alive, they're going to be pinched close.
Our final species that we're going to talk about today are limpets.
Oh, I love limpets.
These are the ones that look like little hats. They come in a few different sizes and colors. This one's striped.
Here's a hat.
Yep. This one's just white. They're all sorts of different sizes, all sorts of different colors. When they're alive, they're going to be very solidly attached to the rocks.
Suction to things.
Please do not try and pull them off.
You will kill them.
Yep.
So thanks so much for joining us today. We hope you're all staying safe, and we hope you're all staying busy and, trying to make up for this time with no school. And so a lot of these videos that we're going to film in the future, today we're in our living room, but in future we'll be taking you out onto the beach here in Nanaimo to check out what's around here, so that if you don't have access to the beach so easily from home, that you can see it here with us. And thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you're staying safe.
Yeah, have a great day, guys.
Bye.
Bye.